And from there, it's fairly easy to seek into Plato's theory of knowledge, or his epistemology, and also his metaphysics. Now, this is the famous Platonic theory of forms, which I'm going to discuss. I think it's probably all I'm going to have time for in this segment. It's been a very influential idea, especially on Christianity. I think the best way to approach this is kind of to discuss where Plato is coming from, because this theory is, I believe, wrong. And it also sounds quite crazy, but it's interesting to know where he's coming from to see why it's wrong. So Plato spent some time in Italy with the Pythagoreans. So you remember the Pythagoreans from school. There's the square of the hypotenuse for the right angle triangle, some other numerical things. And he's discovered that maths is quite a good form of knowledge. It seems to be almost certain. Now, indeed, above his academy, it's reputed that the words were written, "Let no man who does not know geometry enter here." So he put a very high standard on maths. And this idea of kind of knowledge as being permanent was popularised in the Greek world by a philosopher known as Parmenides. So on the one hand, you had his conception of the world. On the other, you had the view of Heraclitus. This world was unchanging and impermanent. And the senses were unreliable. And the senses are unreliable. For example, if I take a straw, I dip it in water, it appears that the straw is bent, but yet if I take it out again, the straw isn't bent. Now, you and I know that this is just a trick of the light, and the trick of the eye due to diffraction. But it just goes to show that, well, to Plato at least, the physical world seemed unreliable. So he's trying to reconcile these two almost contradictory views about the nature of the world and knowledge, and to do so, he comes up with this idea of the divided line, a republic. So he goes, okay, well, imagine everything in the world is on one side or the other of this divided line. So draw a line. He divides it out. On the one side, you have the physical world, and on the other side, you have the world of ideas. So in the physical world, you have the world of coming and passing away, which is the mere sort of sensory illusions, the world of change and flux. You have belief in physical objects, which is slightly higher. Then on the side of knowledge, you have dianoia, or mathematical reasoning, and noesis, or the philosophical understanding of good, as the highest form of knowledge. So there's these two sections, and these explain why the world is appears to be in flux, but yet the true world is in fact unchanging. And kind of the way things get from this side, the side of knowledge, to the side of the physical world is through this theory of forms. And this is this idea that there is a form of everything. Let me give you an example of this, okay? Imagine that I have a black cat, a white cat, and a ginger cat, and they're all linked by this common concept of cattishness. Plato argues that this concept of cattishness resides in the perfect form of the cat, which is to be found in this world of knowledge, which is outside of space and outside of time. Now, therefore, it's possible for things from this perfect world of knowledge to influence the way we perceive things in this temporal and transient world, while themselves being permanent and unchanging. So this is kind of a very academic and high-level overview, and Plato sort of simplifies this subsequently in the allegory of the cave, where he gives a concrete example. And it's a very good story, so I'll narrate it to you. Imagine that there is a cave full of prisoners. These prisoners are having a pretty grim life. They've never been allowed to go outside. They've never seen the sun. All they've known is the torches in the cave. But one day, a prisoner is led up outside, and he is allowed to see the sun. It's a glorious sunny day. Well, obviously, the guy's not in London. And then he's led back down into the cave, and the prisoners ask him, what was it like up there, And he goes, well, the sun, it's just like one of these torches, but imagine 10,000 times brighter. And in essence, that's what the world of forms is like. Everything in this temporal and physical world is just a pale copy of things in this permanent world. And you can imagine, with a religion like Christianity, that this is very influential. You have this permanent, unchanging, thoroughly good God that is meant to exist alongside this impermanent and world that is constantly in flux. So Plato's been heavily influential in Western thought in this respect.